Hello, lovely people. Welcome back to Focus Hive. Today, we are going to talk about MFA, multi-factor authentication. Multi-factor authentication has been a buzzword given the surge in security incidents and the attention the security world is getting now. Let's hope that at the end of this session, you would be able to understand MFA and different types of MFA. You would be able to define MFA for yourself. And looking at the agenda that I have today, just trying a format to keep the discussion within a set boundaries. Now, what I'm going to talk about is a little bit of a history, because as a child, whenever I was trying to learn something new, learning a little bit about the history had given a good perspective, help understand the subject a little more. And hence, I always try and capture a little bit anecdotal, historical references of what we are trying to learn. We will also define multi-factor authentication for ourselves. There are plenty of definitions. We'll make one for ourselves. We are going to look at different types of MFA, the broader categories, as well as some of the type of implementations of MFA, so that we really understand whenever we are asked for certain type of codes, then we know what kind of authentication or what kind of MFA we are using. While we end the session with a little bit of an understanding as to what the future brings for MFA, where it is evolving into. So let's just look at how it all began. In 1997, a patent was filed by Kim.com. Mr. Kim actually had filed a patent after he built 2FA. However, there was another patent that was filed by AT&T, and they had disputed Mr. Kim's patent, which was taken back. The overall patent from Mr. Kim was taken away because AT&T was able to prove that they had built and invented 2FA in 1995. So that's something important for us to know anecdotally that where it began. However, in 2004, in one of the RSA conferences, Mr. Bill Gates, spoke about security, and he clearly said passwords are dead. And in 2016, President Obama spoke about how and why passwords are not enough for security. And by then, I believe a majority of application organizations were already started using 2FA and different forms of MFA. But that's where it all begins. Now, at this point, I feel, let me just give you an analogy of why MFA, 2FA, or different forms of multiple authentications is important, right? So let's suppose you have a safe in your house and you've put in your liquid cash in it. You put in your real estate documents in it. You put in some important documents about your funds inside that safe. Would you choose to have it locked with a set of digits, fingerprints in your bedroom, and then lock your bedroom and then come out and lock your main door before you go out? Or would you prefer just have a wooden cabinet, put all these documents, all your money in there, and lock your main door and then go out? Which one would you prefer, right? No brainer. Obviously, you would want to lock it under as secure as you can make, and have it hidden under your bed, or maybe in some of the Bollywood movies under your floor, under the tiles, whatever you can, to hide it away from the naked eye, right? So that's what the analogy is basically you make it more and more complex for someone else to prove that it's you, right? That's the whole reason, to ensure that whenever the resources data is being accessed, it is being accessed by the right user. That's the whole idea of authentication, and making it more complex means making it more secure. And that is where MFA has come in to solve the problem of authenticating users, not just only by passwords. Passwords are actually dead. It's time we get away with it and go passwordless, right? However, let's now look at the various aspect of MFA and come up with our own definition of it. So, what is MFA used for? Right? Again, a trivial question, but it's used to authenticate. It's used to prove that it's you. Well, the password does that. Obviously, the password does that, but password is something that can be cracked much easily than a secure code or an encrypted certificate. Hence, the basic requirement for MFA is basically to authenticate you. Now, you don't trust yourself as well. And that's the whole concept of zero trust, that you do not trust anyone in this whole wide world about proving your identity, which means you should not trust yourself as well, which means if you know the password, you should not even trust yourself that the person entering the password is you, which means you enter the password and then it should ask you for another means to prove that it's you. It could be an OTP, it could be a string, it could be a security question, it could be a facial recognition, it could be anything. So that is why the word multi came in, which means more than one method to prove that it's you. And you should not have 365 days to prove that it's you once you've entered the password. Otherwise, you'll go and do a plastic surgery and come back and do a facial recognition. That's why it is time bound. That's why it needs to be time bound, which means if we put all four boxes together, it's a means and method to authenticate without any trust on any individual or any system, without any trust on individuals or systems, and forcing you to authenticate yourself with more than one method within a given specific time. And that's my definition of MFA. So now let's look at different types of MFA, right? And broad category of different types of MFA is knowledge possession inherence, which means something that you know is knowledge, which means your password or your security question. So you basically, whenever you create your credentials, you kind of create your username and a password, and you log in using that. At times, the systems also ask you for a security question. There are a set of questions you could choose from: your first pet's name, your mother's maiden name, your first school name, your and when they felt that the questions were not exhaustive enough, they have also started providing us the capability to create our own security questions, create your own 3 security questions, and add the answers to them. So these are different methods by which the knowledge type of MFA is implemented. Next comes possession. Possession means something you have. Knowledge was something you know. Possession is something you have, which means you have a smartphone, you have a smart card, you have a security key, you have a certificate. So anything tangible that you have, which you can provide to prove that it's you. Your identity card, your voter card that you use on security checks at airport, that it's you, buddy. It's me. See, look at me. So those are the kind of things that you could call as possession. However, in software, you'd not use your voter card or your passport, but you would use your smart cards that are given to you by the organizations, or your OTPs that are generated and sent over to you on your phone, or call, or basically security certificates that you're using, which kind of help authenticate that it's you. Those are the kind of things that comes under possession. Lastly, inherence, which means who you are. And this encompasses of fingerprints, facial recognitions, voice, retina, etc., to prove that it's you. So those are broadly the 3 main categories of MFA. Now let's look at how these things have been implemented and something that's relatable to one another. So email codes, the most primitive method of MFA, sending you codes to your email address, which means whenever you are logging into a system, you enter your credentials, which means your username and a password, and then it prompts you for a code. And that code at that point in time has been sent to your email address. So you access your email address or you access your email, pick up the codes from there and enter it here. It's generally alphanumeric or numbers, however it has been implemented. You would get those codes and then you would enter that in the system and you'll be able to authenticate. Now, this is primitive, as I said, not that secure, because if your password is compromised, somebody would have already accessed your emails and could get access to your codes and could render you or block you from accessing your own credentials. Right? So email method or email codes are one way of implementing MFA. The second one is text and call one-time passwords. The implementation is exactly same like email OTP or email MFA, which means in text or call one-time password is basically you get these OTPs when you are trying to log in on your cell phone as a text message or a call, and using that you can authenticate. Again, something which is like if somebody gets access to your phone, they'll get your OTPs. The other drawback is that if your reception is weak, sometimes, though Airtel tells us that it's everywhere, sometimes there are challenges with network, and probably you'll end up not getting the access if you don't get the codes, right? So that's another challenge with OTPs. Next is something, there are a lot of videos that have been published on TikTok or Instagram about how one's spouse or girlfriend is unlocking their phones using their foot thumbprint or their fingerprints. So yeah, those are the things that you would use in biometrics, such as your retina, your facial scan, your fingerprints, and things like those are widely used in smartphones nowadays. So another good method of setting up MFA. However, important aspect to know is that alone having biometrics not safe. You got to combine it with another method, like you use your username and password, and then you kind of authenticate it through your facial recognition or through your fingerprints. Do not have an implementation where you just put the phone on your face and you're accessing everything. So that's an important aspect of it. The other one is a physical key, something very tangible that you can hold on to. So if you're working in a banking system, you already know about this. You probably are given a smart card or a USB kind of a key that you use whenever you try to access that secured data or systems. You plug it in your system, couple it with your credentials, and voila, you get the access to the data in the system. Again, this is the most secured, however, a bit costly because it requires additional piece of hardware that the organization will have to invest in. So it is mostly given to people who are critical and have access to critical data. So that's why it's used less, but is a foolproof mechanism of providing security in terms of logins to critical data. Another type is Authenticator app. I believe that's what's being used now majorly. Most of the applications, most of the users are using Authenticator apps. There are two flavors to it. Whenever you use an Authenticator app, it gives you two options. One is basically whenever you're logging into an application, it sends you a prompt to say, yes, it's me or not. When you say, yes, it's me, then a code is automatically sent to the system and gets you logged in. Or you can choose to key in your code yourself, right? So both options are available as long as you're using Authenticator apps. And currently, this is the mostly or most widely used option for MFA. And to a certain extent, I feel this is also one of the great options because it is coupled with ease of use. Because you just get a prompt, you click on yes, and you're logged in. Voila. There's no more complexity of going to your email, accessing some codes, or looking at your SMS, or getting a phone call. Those kind of user actions are not required on it. So authenticator apps are really good. These are basically different kind of implementation of MFA or multi-factor authentication, which kind of gives you the option to prove that it's you to a system in multiple ways. And that's why these are widely used and provide you great sense of security and sharing your data, accessing critical information on your corp network, or be able to access your own social logins, your own credentials, right? So all kind of data should be behind logins and should be behind MFA implementation. Do not feel that you don't need MFA on any kind of login, because it's a short method to give you a high level of security. It's heading towards something which is already being tested and not being tested, which is already being used in some of the platforms, was called as adaptive MFA. Adaptive MFA is basically something that looks at your device, what device you're using to gain access to your data, which means either your devices are registered, something that your iPhone does, Google does. They know which device you're logging in and they registered that device in their database. Second is your location awareness. Are you accessing the data from your corp network, home network, VPN, public network, on the go? Where are you accessing this data from? So that's critical, and based on that, you're prompted for a different kind of an MFA, right? So that's how you kind of implement it. And the other one, last one, is the user behavior. Something very important, like sometimes we tend to forget our credentials. So if we have entered wrong credentials more than 3 times, that's a user behavior, and that should be taken notice of, and some kind of a different action should happen. Maybe I get a phone call verification or something else. So those kind of actions can be taken. Maybe you're prompted to add a CAPTCHA or whatever. So adaptive MFA is something that's evolving into. However, you never know where it all can go to with cryptography and DLT implementations. The sky is the limit in order to provide and get security. With that, I sum up my session today. I hope this was informative for you. Give your thumbs up, like, share, and subscribe, and spread the word across the world, and let people know about Focus Hive. Thank you again.